else we had, we'll continue to let you guys know. Is there any more questions in regards to the training? Are you still? How do you guys feel about the information? You still getting it? Jason, where are you now in regards to the soldering?
I'm learning how to do the actual soldering of different types of components.
Okay, cool. Are you practicing that on your practice board right now?
Not currently. I'm just watching the videos first, then I'll go back through and do it with the video.
Excellent. I think that's a great approach. Thomas, where are you in regards to your training?
I'm just going into the I think it's lesson 5.
Okay.
So it's where they're talking about the towers and the components. That the information that I have gotten, I mean, for me, as far as a basic understanding of how things work, it's turning on light bulbs everywhere.
Right.
Because knowing how things actually work, it makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. That's why we did it. That's that's exactly why we did it.
To me, it's an invaluable part.
Exactly. That's why we did it. It starts at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So, especially for guys who don't have a electronics background, like Jason. Right. Of course, you went to school, but Thomas, you're starting kind of from scratch. So, again.
Right. Okay. So this is a Samsung S3. And here's the charging port right here.
Start by asking, how's the training coming? Is it helping?
For me, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I finally it's all clicking now. I got to the end of the troubleshooting. I just have to do the final test, and then I can move on to the micro soldering.
Okay. So that's what I told you before, right? When you get to the end, all of that stuff that you were like, I was totally lost. That stuff starts to make sense, right?
Yes.
Cool. Joe, what about you? How's that soldering? Are you getting a lot of soldering work?
I mean, on what Frank is saying, it's super important to really track your marketing, because if you're not able to say, like you were chimed off a minute ago, that you spent $10,000 on print ads, but you had a 1 to 3% conversion. And it sounds like you're not 100% sure on that exactly, and you should be able to say this is how much dollars that campaign specifically generated, especially when we're doing online things, because online can get really expensive really quickly when you start doing PPC. So it's really important to understand which campaigns are going to be the most effective, so you can turn those up and turn the ones that aren't effective down, right? So just to chime on what Frank is saying, that is absolutely the most important thing, is to get some sort of tracking mechanism in place, number one. And I think I'm not overly familiar with Repair Shopper. I haven't actually worked in the system, but I do know that it has some of that built in. Mm-hmm. So definitely spend the time, if it takes you maybe an hour or something like that to get that set up. That would be one of the most important things. Or even if you got to go old school and just get some paper or whatever, a spreadsheet set up, that's going to be super critical, because, realistically, when we get into the marketing stuff, we're going to tell you about how to create campaigns that pay for themselves, and it's going to be really important that you understand how to track that, so you know that, again, because if you get a campaign that's paying for itself, it's really easy to turn that up to generate more revenue versus just throwing money at things and not being sure, what's kicking off and what's not, especially as you're, doing this multi-pronged approach when it comes to marketing.
Training, did you?
I did.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about when I say the preheater, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that preheater you guys can use, and that is very effective. It's different. There's different techniques and different styles of how to do the soldering. Some people choose to use just the primary heat, right, which is just your rework station. That would be your primary. Some people choose not to use the secondary. But in my advice especially for like S3s, I would definitely advise using a secondary heat, because it's not. You know what I mean?
I have a hard time getting proper wetting when I do that.
Do you? And it's different. Like I said, it's different strokes for different folks.
Well, I'm not talking about with the preheater. I mean, just with I don't use a preheater because I haven't spent the money on one.
Right.
But my problem with the S3 charge ports is getting proper wetting.
Right. You mean when you're putting it back on, or when you're taking it off? Where it's just us. You guys got any questions for me? Anything?
I do, but I'm probably premature with them. I'm just about to the end of the diagnostics, and we're into the equipment end of that. And the oscilloscope, would you recommend? I mean, you can find them anywhere from $60 to $2,000.
Yes, sir. Just like anything else.
Probably don't need just something to measure just a couple of different wavelengths.
Well, the thing with the Oscope, so this is how the Oscope works. So the Oscope, you're only going to use the Oscope for 2 checks, and Oscope is all about now. The Oscope can be used, as you guys learned in the training, it can be used for both the voltage, right? But typically what we use to measure voltage is our multimeter. So I mean, you can't, if you know how to measure voltage with a Oscope, it can be used to do that. But for the most part, the Oscope is going to be used for two checks. That's and anything that has to do with a speaker. So that's your earpiece speaker, right, and your loudspeaker. And what you're checking for with the Oscope is you're checking for the sound frequency. So essentially, what you're doing is you're seeing sound as opposed to hearing sound, right? So the Oscope allows you to see the sound. So what you're doing, just like you learned in the training, is you're verifying that the sound is actually coming out of the speaker. So for example, whether that's the ear speaker or the loudspeaker. So for example, if a customer brings you a device and the device is not, you don't have an earpiece, the earpiece is not making any sound, right? There's nothing coming out of the earpiece. So what you want to verify, two things, right? We learned in the training. So you have your component level check that you're doing, right? Which it could be the component, which would be what? The earpiece speaker, right? Or it could be at a board level. That's the issue. So what these checks are designed to do, guys, is two things. It's designed to speed up your process in making a decision and help you make a more logical decision in regards to what the next step is. So what we're trying to do is save two things. We're trying to save time and we're trying to save money, right? And both of which are the same. Money is interchangeable in any business. So what that allows you to do is say, okay, let's do our checks to see if we have a earpiece speaker component issue. If we do, what's our next step, right? We order a part, right? We know it's the component. If it's not the component, we check the component and the component's okay, that's great. Now we know we don't need to order a part because our component seems to be working fine. Let's check our board level. So at the board level, we're checking for two things. We can check voltage on the earpiece speaker, and we can also check the sound, right, the output sound. So the voltage, when the earpiece speaker is active, we should get about anywhere from 2.1 to 2.5 volts. That's your operational voltage. So what that says is the voltage to my earpiece speaker is working properly. Does that make sense?
Right, yes.
So because again, just like you guys learned in training, every component on your device needs a operational voltage. It's just like, I use the example of plugging something into the wall, right? If I have, say, this, I've got this right here, this preheater, right? This preheater's not going to work unless I plug it into the wall, right?
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing with parts on your device, on your phone. Every external part needs to be plugged into the wall, which would be the board, right, in order to work properly. So, and what it's getting is a operational voltage. Does that make sense? This has a operational voltage. Without the voltage, it's not going to work. And the components are basically the same thing. So every component, that's why we do the voltage test at the board level. Because if there's no voltage, then essentially what we're doing is when we plug in that component, it's not getting an operational voltage. So that's one thing we check for. Now with the Oscope, which you were asking about, Thomas, with the Oscope, we can go further to verify whether we're actually getting a out. Because just because you have a voltage doesn't necessarily mean you're getting a sound frequency. Does that make sense? So sound frequency is what you see on the Oscope, which is explained in the training. Now with that being said, with the earpiece speaker, with the loudspeaker, with the microphone, all of those things have to be in an active state to measure properly. So an active state basically